While not discussed in the interview, some scenes in What Josiah Saw discuss sexual assault and incest, which may be disturbing for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Just as an overarching thing for What Josiah Saw, what was it like working with each of these actors?
I mean, you feel grateful because they've all been doing this a long time. One of the things as a filmmaker, I like vetting out actors in terms of how they are to work with, because by the time you get a movie made and you're on set, you want it to be a fun, pleasurable experience. And there are sometimes actors out there that it's just not. And so the fact that we got these caliber of actors on this budget for this movie. It was awesome. Everyone from Robert, Scott Hayes, Nick Stahl, Kelly, Tony Hill, um, Jake Weber, even the local actors out there in Oklahoma. It's uh, such pros. Uh, Ben Hall in Oklahoma, Ronnie Jean Blevins, who's a friend of mine who helped us get Robert Patrick, because he had done this movie called Tone Deaf with him, and so he helped sort of circumvent the agents and and helped us land him. But you don't get a lot of time to rehearse at all. I mean, we didn't know rehearsals. I met Nick Stahl on the first day of shooting. I talked to him a couple times on the phone, but you trust these people. Like I said, they've been doing this a long time. You you trust them to do that work, and based on your conversations beforehand, on day one or on set, they're there and they know what they're doing. And so um it's fascinating to see them bring something to life that you've lived with for so long.
For sure. And speaking of bringing the story to life, this movie has a lot of heavy tones to it, and I'm curious, when it comes to filming each of these scenes and filming parts of the movie, is it difficult to keep the set lively and energetic despite the difficulty of some of these scenes to shoot?
That's a good question. I mean, most people want to know, like, the other elements, like, what attracted you to this story or whatever. um it is interesting to think about that, because doing a heavy movie, a horror movie, uh, you think, you're setting the tone to be like taken serious. Like, we're all like having a blast. It's almost too fun. Like, I had so much fun doing this movie that, um, it makes you question, like, yourself sometimes. You would get an intense scene, and when they nail it, you're just, the cinematographer is jumping on my back for what we captured for the day. um but there were a couple scenes in this movie that were really awkward to do. And you just sit there and get it done. And by I think by the after a few takes, uh the actor the actors were just like, look, man, I can't do this anymore. And so, you know yeah, I mean, there are tough moments, but believe it or not, the set like this, um, when you're putting out fires, because there's always problems that happen when you make something this low. So it is tense in terms of the things that go wrong or things that fall through, and you need to work it out. But what we were capturing, we're all very excited about. And so when you shoot a cool take, everyone's like, watching it on playback, that's what we're doing. That's like why we're doing this. That's why we love it so much, because you're just having a lot of fun, and you're creating stuff.
And you get to all see it come together by the end.
Yeah,
But you were talking about like what attracted you to the script. So I'm curious, when you first had your hands on the script, what really drew you into this story that you're telling?
I think it was the rich characters, and how it sort of tackled what is horrifying in human nature, and how trauma sort of can manifest itself. I was really interested that the way it tackled that, and how you had these characters 20 plus years since their childhood, still managing that, or trying to manage that trauma. because it's something that is, you can't cure trauma. And this movie really dives in there in a way that I thought was a horror movie. It's not conventional, and some people may think it's more of a an intense dark drama, but to me it was always a horror movie, and I wanted to to make sure we bridged that with certain elements like cinematography and score, um, because to me it was a horror movie, uh, and so I wanted that to be. Um, we did our best to try and capture that.
Well, I think you'll certainly captured it. It's a very every moment in that movie is hard hitting, and especially with you're talking about the score. What was the process of roping that score in to each of these scenes to where it felt kind of like its own character at times?
Yeah. Well, Robert Pisior did the score. I had sort of lived with temp music for several years leading up to this that I was thinking about, and that's sort of a process I have while developing a movie is sort of what's the score or songs, needle drops, like what am I thinking, like just living in it. And I create this thing like a music reference script that has the script, and I bold the areas of the script that I feel like there would be music or score. And then I put like a YouTube link of my reference that I'm thinking of, and sort of explain like, the duration, why. And I, by the time like I hire a composer, I hand them that, and they know where my mind is, and then they can take it and run with it. It's just a blueprint.
Hmm.
And Robert, just he plays a lot of the instruments himself, and I knew I wanted actual live strings, live instruments, manipulated piano strings, plucking, stuff like that, really inspired off of like Christoph Penderecki and Joseph Pichara, among some others. But basically, yeah, he took it and ran with it, and it was fascinating to see because I hadn't really um, had a score in a film of mine this significant.
Hmm.
But to me, it really helped let the audience know that this is an ominous piece, and you're more than likely heading to a place that's doomed.
Yeah. Speaking of doom and gloom, it's a very gothic movie. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious if there are any other gothic movies, gothic shows, gothic media that kind of inspired you in pulling this entire movie together.
Well, I think the things that I thought about were more probably like literary, like novels. Like this felt like a Faulkner or a Cormac McCarthy sort of scope of a project. Um, in terms of films, not really. I think I was just dialed into what Robert had created. And his writing is very um visceral, but not in a novelistic way. Like when you write a script, you got to be careful not to be too verbose or gimmicky. And he just writes very clean, but something about it just sucks you in. It's very tight, um, in terms of his descriptions, but you feel the world. And so that's the sort of things that came to mind when I had finished this. It's kind of like a No Country for Old Men meets uh like a Cormac McCarthy horror tragedy.
Hmm. And in terms of bringing that script to life, what would you say the hardest scene to translate into a visual moment was?
Well, there at the end of the first chapter, there's a significant scene that happens between Robert Patrick and Scott Hayes that was sort of every pass we got on the from an actor on Josiah, every person that sort of said you're crazy or you got to cut this scene, you know, I knew how necessary the scene was, but I definitely knew how difficult it was to going to be to do. And so the day came when that was the scene, and it was very difficult. It was very awkward. And Robert and Scott, you know, they did what they had to do. And it just, we shot it very raw and just simple, nothing fancy. And they basically at some point came to me and were like, look, man, I can't do this anymore. Like, I think we're good. I was like, yep, we're good. That's sort of how it played out. And it works. It definitely works in terms of giving the audience the permission to want to leave a chapter and not want to go back. Um, that was sort of the device that really worked for me, is the audience should, in the first third of this movie, go, I can't take much more of this. Like, where are we going? And you are essentially switching gears to another place and chapter. And I thought that device really worked, because I feel like, you're going back to that farm at some point, and it's going to be a place you don't want to go back, or you're going to wonder what the hell is happening there now when you do get back.
Hmm.
So I thought it really worked in that sense.
Would you say with the chapters, you when you broke it down, did you try to capture a different tone with each one? Because every time, like you said, when I was watching it, each chapter felt to build up more dread. It felt like.
Yeah. Well, I wanted some things to be consistent, like a through line, and then I wanted you to feel like the setting was a little different, or because it is. When you ended up in the next chapter with Eli, or the first chapter, you almost feel like you're back in time. Like there's almost a timeless feeling to it. It feels forgotten, left behind, things are dying off. And by Mary's chapter, you realize you're in present day. So it really worked in terms of what we're trying to say about these characters. But yeah, it's I just wanted the audience to really get to know these people individually. And so the chapters, I thought, was a really cool way to require the audience invest in this, because it's a movie you have to, I think, invest in as a viewer. You can't really have your phone or step away to go to the refrigerator. You can miss something important. And it kind of requires, to get the payoff, to get that horror that you want, you have to invest somewhat in it, and makes you work a little bit. So maybe that's not for everybody, but as a moviegoer myself, that's sort of what I really was into.
Yeah. And so you mentioned filming up in Oklahoma, right? So was majority of this film or all of it filmed in Oklahoma, and what was that like?
Yeah, it was all filmed in Oklahoma. I mean, the script was more or less written for Texas, but for financial incentive reasons, for our budget and stuff like that, Oklahoma has just a really big film incentive, really competitive, healthy one right now. And so there's a lot of filming going on there. We got in right around the perfect time before it blew up. But it was enough that the crew there was just really great. A couple shout outs to Shad Coffee, was my Steadicam operator, and Philip Bird, who was my first AC focus puller. It's two of the best I've ever worked with in terms of those departments, in Oklahoma, which has a sort of landscape vibe like Texas. So it was a no brainer to go there to shoot this. But yes, great local cast. Just it was awesome. Great people too, like good food. I had the worst allergies I've had in a long time there, though. I was sneezing 15 times a day.
Okay, especially outside.
Yeah, no, it was funny.
Are there
I
any
was
other? Oh, good.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, are there any other like funny set stories you'll have from being out there?
Oh God, yeah. No, there was a lot of things trying to knock us off the totem pole, was that had nothing to do with making the movie. One incident was the first AD, the second AD, and one of my producers were staying in an Airbnb, and while we were shooting, it got burglarized. And this guy took a ton of stuff, and our first AD had a camera in his room, and he was watching it happen like live. He's like, no, and calls 911. And yeah, so a ton of their stuff got taken. But then a couple days later, a friend of his hits him up, and she goes, well, did you use my credit card at Schlotsky's for like $200? And he goes, no. And then he realized, oh God, like the guy who stole our stuff is using that credit card, and the police were able to track him down at a motel and did a whole sting, caught him, and he had a room full of stuff he had stolen from. He was like a pro thief, sold somebody's dog. And so luckily our crew got all their stuff, that pretty much almost everything that he had taken from them. And then other crazy things like, are you one of the trucks with the wardrobe in it, somebody forgot to shut the back, and driving on the freeway, two of our main characters' wardrobes flew out, gone on
Oh
the
my
freeway.
goodness.
And we had to replace three of the characters, all, the Eli, Thomas, and Josiah, all their wardrobe gone. But luckily we had wrapped Josiah and Thomas, so we didn't need their wardrobe anymore.
Yeah,
Thank God.
that would have been a
But
nightmare.
yeah, Eli's we had to replace. And luckily he's only in a couple different wardrobes though, because his chapter is more or less like only one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, the shirt he puts on from the Boone character that he throws him, that was a last minute replacement that we had made. We had that shirt made and pressed, and so that was one of the shirts that was lost on the day we were filming that scene, so we had to rush to kind of come up with a replacement.
Scramble to get
But
something.
yeah, no, there's a ton of set stories that were your typical independent film fires that you're putting out. Tons of that. And but at the end of the day, every day we wrapped shooting, we were so excited with what we were getting. But yeah, we have a behind the scenes making of. I don't know what Shudder's going to do with it. I don't know if they release it at some point, but it's like
Hopefully.
a half an hour thing, which has some funny shit in it.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
And so I guess the last question I was going to ask is, what advice would you give to students looking to pursue film like you do?
Well, now more than ever, everything's available to you. I think 20 years ago, to make an independent film, it would look like it was shot on, digital tape, and it just wouldn't have that sort of cinematic look that maybe some people would think you need to make a movie. Now everyone has it and at your disposal. I would say more than anything, and is just finding a group of people that need the same things that you do, whether it's you want to direct your first movie or produce your first movie or act in a starring role in your movie, is to get a surrounding of people that you trust and that you're hungry and passionate, and find that script that you guys want to make together and just do it. Make it for 20 grand, make it for 10 grand, make it for 30 grand, whatever you can find, because it puts you in the driver's seat. You're kind of controlling your own destiny. Don't rely on production companies to say yes. Don't rely on agents or managers. Don't rely on anything else but yourselves in executing it. Because the amount of time, sweat, and energy you're going to put into getting somebody else to get it for you, you're going to waste a lot of time, when it's much easier, I think, to find a small amount of money through friends, family, credit cards, working your own job, saving up to make it. And if for some reason you guys are talented, or the filmmakers are talented, and you play at a top festival, it sort of can jumpstart your career. I mean, it kind of happened with me and a few of my friends with Bellflower. So that's what we did, and it took off. And so I really push that in terms of just going and making a movie, finding one you want to make, because it's there and it's possible. So